So it's a gift to all countries anyway. But it's a challenge who will be the first one to institute it, to make a cartoon character, to explain it to the people of your country, and and to keep that cartoon character. Someone else has to donate that character for your country. And this is donated idea. I'm donating to you guys. And what the first thing he'll have to explain is how and why there are new he or she is why or both. You can have both, or you can have one and they just represent, and you have any kind of relative or neighbor and things that or boss. They need to come into the conversation. In other words, this can change the nature of negotiations at countries A through Z because it can change the nature of things. And countries A through Z have left out and missed because everyone had it left out and replaced. How a breaching method was entrenched. A breaching method that wasn't countries A through Z because it was entrenched there too. Proper telling of American history is a telling about how there was a breaching method entrenched that nobody wanted collusion slash us with, but nobody had a choice. Like where and how you don't use black people's rights of eyes as evidence, and where and how that anything even like research. Oh, what research you have? That black people's rights of eyes. A breaching method was entrenched before America's founders were born, and replaced what nature communicates, and forced that pretended integrity. All right, regarding the swear, it also is a hyper positive. Badios is a swear, in other words, but it's not, in other words, babadiados. You could say that to someone's affection. It's about where we are hyper positive, we are hyper additionally positive, increasingly. Babadiados. Babadiados sees, you could say too. You can refer to a person that way or a species body, but the species body is represented by Babadiados sees. But the species body is a part of a trinity connected to you with a complete identity of nature, even though it doesn't fit but one way, with temporary slash lasting space nature, which it is making more of its identity evolving through nature's identity. One of the things that nature is constantly, and and with exceptions, is a forever nature. And English was revealed to teach this, but also about how some exceptions and except it come with a demonstration slash s of the same. They appear to be, in other words, your parents invented why and how you have two eyes to an extent, but even those exceptions, they come with demonstration slash s that nature is generating why. Totally different species bodies also have two eyes, also have two sexes. A preaching that when people come together at colleges and stuff like that, they go, "Oh, people always teach the first words they teach people are swears." That's because there's a breaching method entrenched, and it's an emphatic way. In other words, there's a psychopath appreciation of principal treatments inside what is calmly relativity to subject treatments that we know are improper, like we have black people's rights of eyes. Forgiveness is because to discern the breaching method, like our founders communicated, our founders left us, they were conscious that no one had free speech, including themselves. That James Madison had this declassified for us. We were supposed to have that communications amended to appreciation of his words. People won't say, "Oh, what amendment is it? What amendment is it?" We have Judge Napolitano said we have rights that are too numerous to list them. And we need to pay attention because, and forgiveness, part of the reason forgiveness is because why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And then and now they still have other communicators for our founders, and they left declassified to be communicated for themselves. And hasn't coupled with appreciation of their words, because appreciation of their words and of all the other words are the names of the people of sciences and of people regarding reality. It has been apart from the relativity slash hyper relativity. That three distinct identities of relationship to itself. Nature has that are equally increasingly valued. Apart with how it shows us. It is functional being, hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. And so that's not a swear, babayaros, or babayarosi. But badios is a swear. And we're in other words, but now it's not discussing it. You could say be you to replace fu. And one could say, as badios or badios, and to replace BS. In other words, and we're going to examine how we need the emphatics, because there's a method, there's a forgiveness slash non-forgiveness. So everyone has been appreciating tactical terror from how nature does. 3 ways. So that's the swear. And then, in other words, it replaces all the swears. And it also puts down this hyper-additional method. And the whole objective of this cartoon character is to stack, we're going to blame a breaching method. Nature itself shows us. Before America's founders were born, there were a whole bunch of crazy laws, and against everyone and every difference. And one of the things they were all valuable is at the same time. And then America's founders were born. Everyone had already been roles with that. But in other words, one thing is that all those sick things against women, against Native, against black pupils, against white survivors, one of those things is about at the same time is about a human fact treatment nature breaching method. What would happen if those people, in other words, if everyone was forced to give everyone free speech equality, where they're not going to be, we'll leave out exceptions, maybe excuse. People had excuses. The breaching method knew that everyone would have an excuse. The breaching method knew that it has a method that doesn't let people have excuses. While they're doing that, because that's the way they look at it, it's looking at everyone's keeping for itself other things others themselves forced. Blame. Right where the breaching method is supposed to be blamed. Per nature itself and for our founders. Nature itself is showing us all those distinct multi-front human impositions against different people, groups, things, against humanity. But it's but at the same time, it's about a human factor nature breaching method. We have been separated from the quality of fact treating nature we need. Every individual has this shown to them since we were kids. We look away from that because of reasons. You're going to miss it because it's a projection. Some kids are going to sense it and then they're going to be sensed. But what this breaching method does is little tricks at location/s. But at the same time, forgiveness is also because of the differences of the guilt of the interbranch family members, all ages of them too, and the intelligence tied to them, ones that aren't even interbranch, but they're intelligent, or the names next to them, the difference of that. But at the same time, the other foreign countries, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, international companies, that recorded how kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts and delusions and worse. Predicate acts with facts, methods, needs, natures, and styles pretended other. Shown used remotely shown needs to make examples of free speech and pretend it's debatable dishonestly, and or also as tools as breaching method tools, as quote talking heads unquote, and in other words, calling attacks on themselves too. Increasingly, in other words, but that's the thing. We put down America has the right. Any Native American too. Any Native American group could put down. Every Native American make their own. That's donate a cartoon character because the president slash chief is cipher to be deciphered. But we have this decipher, and we have the cipher, and we have the nature of debate sabotage. We're supposed to amend what James Madison had declassified about how and why there were internationally monitored conversations entrenched. How everyone was measured and maintained collusion slash S, syntactically, therefore physically, more and more. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including if that body was a majority of people. Any humanity voicing, not entertaining an extent slash S of torture, extortion, and slavery against everyone's self and everyone else. Otherwise, that body was sensed and adapted to. Not just if it was a majority of people, even if it was everyone. Not just because there was wars and things like that. This is a breaching method playing. All group voicings even easier than groupings of countries, even easier than individual ones. Because we are systems syntactically only having been known, remembered, tactical area from the one that reveals the republic for which we stand, and exceptions that it valued and needed, because nature shows us that to be instead being led by how it is functional, having three parts of itself as three distinct identities of hyper invisible but still discernible, and per how where and how they are bound as the three parts of time, for example. Okay, so that's it. Badios. Don't be a badios. So I don't know how with the plural. So the plural of it, if you leave out the second B, it would be so don't be badioses. Don't be badioses, and that'd be a bad word. But we should go. That's why too we need leader to explain the bad word and why how we need it, why how there's a breaching method involved. And for example, no one has been capable of being honest and proper with behavior because of how you reacted and didn't react and didn't discern and did. And the difference of that was exploited where and how there's behavior racketeering worse than war crimes involved here. There's worse than criminal incompetence that spoke about and speaks for black pupils, white survives. I mean, black or white. Let alone where and how I've never even heard black pupils, white survive brought to this conversation. Where and how nature shows it's inseparable from it. Just as is the scientific value of the human fact sheet nature preaching method that forced collusion slash S with such. There is no excuse to hide behind the black, white, the difference of it. All this time, science shows us. The breaching method of science, things like all counters to what it did too, to be collusion slash S with itself by calling it racism. We're going to pay attention to the criminally foreign influence sciences and syntax nature. And we're going to need these swears. This swear, Badios. Don't be a Badios. Don't be Badiosis. Be Babayarosis. Be a Babayaros. Human. Back first. But there are exceptions. Exceptions. Nature shows us. How it shows us. There is one way, every difference. It values, in other words, every body, like for example, part of itself values itself as the past more than it does as the future or the active, and part of itself values itself more as the active, and part of itself values itself more as the future. And these are the kinds of ways that people would come together and look at the parts of it. And when America, when I mean humanity, when they first came to reason and to organize understanding, they were being led before the sciences became criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence, which is a big difference. For example, it's also discernible a distinct nature of breaching method was manifest. Northern colonies and southern colonies, and is manifest where and how there is the nature of debate regarding such, still used remotely, pretending other and screening why and how. That's why and how they're being used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. Everyone's fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature. You guys were abused. So next time, if you're going to call someone a name or swear, call them a badios. And prepare, because there is one way to fight where everyone wins, even if they lose. Are we sense? Vaccines. I teach those things.